by the laws of tzitzit, I want to take this opportunity to thank. It was such a surprise. It was so practical, so beautiful. And I'm dedicating this class in their honor to Liz and Scott Halpern. May they have a beautiful, wonderful life together. For really surprising me with this amazing gadget over here. You're not here to see what I'm talking about, but it's so practical. It's this piece that actually now, from now on, I'm doing my broadcasts on. As you see, the footage on Facebook, at least, because YouTube is running off another platform, and I know that there are different options to run it off. I think even one platform. There's these multitasking cameras as well out there. We'll get there eventually, but for now, on Facebook, if you notice, it's very straight, very viewable. I'm turning this little gadget here myself right now, but it is a stable gadget, and it is a very nice gadget. And it does the job. It's wonderful. It could do many things. We won't start going into the details of exactly what it could do now. We have to get to the class, but it's amazing. The camera is positioned on it. It stands steady and clear in view, and it's flexible and could be in different positions, and it's really amazing. And to have such a piece to do our classes now, and to have a stand for the footage is it's like a tripod basically, is really enhancing our classes. We have a lot more exciting news. We just announced that we're going to be posting tomorrow, Be'ezrat Hashem, we're going to be posting our first series of weekly Torah thoughts, short Torah thoughts, 5 minutes, and it's amazing because with the opportunities we have today with the multimedia, social media is wonderful, and we're trying to enhance that and make it more accessible to the people. And we have over here people that want to have full-on classes. For example, our Halachah class, which is over half an hour to an hour. We have our Torah studies classes, which hopefully we'll continue doing as well in the weeks to come, which are also over an hour, some of them. But then there are people that just want to have a class, brief, short, to the point, a few moments, just to hear a thought, so they could bring to a Shabbat table. And we all want to celebrate the Shabbat together. And we all want to, sorry, 1 second. Just want to make sure the volume is not messing around with us. And we all want to have something to say to our guests, to our families, something inspirational, something what we call a Shabbat takeaway message that we could take to the rest of the week ahead, and gives us more inspiration in what we do, both at home and at work. So Be'ezrat Hashem, we're going to be doing that too, a little bit more of a, I guess, exciting way as it goes on. So stay tuned for that. Tomorrow morning, we're going to have our first episode on the portion of the week. It's a little bit of a mystical, a little bit of a spice of Chassidut, Kabbalah, and of course, practical ways we could implement lessons in life, how to be a better Jew. But for now, we're going to go to the halacha. Oh, Scott is with us. Scott, champion. What a surprise. Thank you again. Thank you, Liz and Scott, for this wonderful piece. It's really amazing. It was exciting when I received it, and it inspired me to be excited to do even more exciting things here with this, with all these gadgets and social media. And what the Rebbe taught us is to take the social media and do positive things with it. There's so much silliness going on out there, and so much nonsense with the social media. And if we could push away the darkness with light, and do the right thing, and it might even mean I have to learn a little bit of Google Analytics and things like that to make sure I'm number one on Facebook, I'm number one on the social media. So those things should be the ones that people see, unlike all the other unnecessary things. we'll learn that too eventually. But for now, we're getting there, going one step at a time. So thank you again, and all the blessings you should see in everything you do, both at work and in your family life, and yeah, only good things, and for all of us. As well, it's a very, very special Shabbat coming up. Before I start, just wanted to mention this Shabbat is the Shabbat of prior to Yud Shvat, the day the Rebbe became leader of the Chabad Lubavitch movement, taking over the mantle of leadership from his father-in-law, the previous Rebbe of Chabad that passed away, in fact, on the same day. A year later, the Rebbe assumed leadership. It's a very, very special Shabbat. If you're able to, if anyone is at a local synagogue, and wherever they may be, if they're here in Forest Hills, please come to Chabad, and we will honor you with an aliyah, hopefully, and we'll have a special celebration and special words of wisdom in this honor. We say the Shabbat before and the Shabbat after, a very, very major blessing because of that special day that falls out in the middle of this week, and therefore the Shabbat both before and after, it's important to say l'chaim, ask for blessings, and because that energy is brought to that special day through the Shabbos. So the Shabbos before and after sort of gives that energy to the day and gives the energy to everyone who's included in it, and that's why it's important to celebrate the Shabbat before and after, both also by having an aliyah, being called up to the Torah, because on the yard sites it's customary, and the Rebbe taught us in Chabad that it's important, and by others as well. It's noticeable that for a yard site to get an aliyah, to get called up to the Torah, because the neshama connects with that special neshama, and by getting called up to the Torah, and therefore the Shabbat before, it's important because the previous Rebbe passed away this week. The Shabbat before, it's important that we all get called up to the Torah. It's our neshamas being called up and connecting with that special tzaddik. So that's why it's very very important to do that, and therefore, even if you're not at Chabad, and you don't even necessarily have to explain it to anyone, even though it's always nice to teach people new things and let them know about the special day and include them as well. But even if it means just you going into a synagogue and, to make things easier, you just ask if it's possible to get a call up to the Torah. It's not going to cost anything, hopefully, unless you got to pay for your call up. In some places, that's how it is. But definitely at Chabad, it's not obligatory. And if you're able to get called up to the Torah on a special occasion, and at least be in the synagogue, and at least be part of this special Shabbos to take those blessings, wherever you may be, this is a very important thing and a very special thing that should be done. Whether you consider yourself Chabad or not, it's about a special tzaddik's neshama. It's about a special righteous soul that passed, and the Rebbe assumed the leadership this week. So it's a very special time, and therefore it's an important time to reflect and take in all the special energy and blessings that come with it, and of course to go to the Rebbe's resting place in this special time, in this week, because of the special day, the 68th anniversary that falls out this week. Find the time to be able to go. The Ohel of the Rebbe and the previous Rebbe is open 24 hours. And there is security, etc. The place is secure, and it's very comfortable and very, very, I should say, soothing. What you call it, very. When you need that peace of mind, sometimes going there, especially later in the day where it's not as packed, and sitting there and just giving yourself that time to meditate and think about what is important in life, it's really, really blessed, and you go away with blessings. Somehow miracles happen there. It's miracles that the Rebbe was doing for people from all levels of observance before he passed and after. It's proven for many people from all different sectors of Judaism and non-Jews alike are coming out of there with special blessings, miracles, physical miracles that are happening for them, and there are stories being told all the time. And there's people that are publicizing that, because why should we be selfish? And we want others to have those blessings. People that need a blessing for children, people who need a blessing to get married, people, you name it, same way they came to the Rebbe then, and the Rebbe fulfilled, took their requests straight to Hashem. So now also we go there and we ask the Rebbe to be that conduit and take our prayers straight to God, because he's on that level and he could do it, and connect us with God in that express type of way that it should happen quicker than later. And surely, like we've been seeing, there are many fulfilled blessings. And at a time like this, definitely it's opportune. We saw also by the Rebbe at these times, it was very opportune and very spiritual, very lofty. Same way we know, like by Lag BaOmer, when Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai passed away, we saw the special. We're taught with how his bed was all light, and there was very, very blessing, and miracles were happening, and special things happened in those times. And the Rebbe, in the before, in the 70s, 80s, when people asked requests for children, they were fulfilled as well, and specifically on that day because of the holiness and specialty of that day. So we know that connecting to the tzaddik on these special times is very opportune, and therefore I want everyone to be able to enjoy those blessings that come with it, and not just to keep it to myself. And we will continue celebrations this Shabbos and continue the celebrations throughout the week. And in fact, on that note, and we'll end with that, is that on Sunday next week, January 20th, we're going to be having a special celebration for the Rebbe's anniversary of accepting the leadership of Chabad, with a special evening of songs for the of the inspired soul, nigunim, which we call in Chabad the nigunim of the Rebbe. Very, very special, by the orchestra, Agnon Quartet Orchestra, that got special amazing awards, and they're famous here in New York area, and they do a wonderful job. It's going to be a gorgeous orchestra musical event with a full dinner and desserts by the Temple Torah of Little Neck. We advertise everything online. If you're able to attend, wherever you may be, especially if you're in New York area, to drive away. There's a full parking lot. You don't have to worry about driving and finding parking. They have a big property for parking, and a beautiful synagogue, and it's going to be in their ballroom. We've made events there in the past for the Rebbe's passing, and we're going to be doing it again with other Chabads of Queens, the Rebbe's leadership anniversary, and the yard side of the previous Rebbe. It's going to be a special event, a special night. Again, very, very important that whoever could attend should attend and enjoy together. Adults, men, and women are welcome, and you could RSVP on our chabadfhm.com website, and everything is advertised on social media. So that's just something I wanted to mention about next Sunday, January 20th. We're going to be celebrating together with the entire Queens communities, Jewish communities. Back to the Halachah class. So, just in case you don't know, my name is Rabbi Mendy Hecht of Chabad of Forest Hills North, and we have Halachah classes weekly, going through the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, the abbreviated Shulchan Aruch, the abbreviated Code of Jewish Law by Reb Shlomo Gansfried. He took the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law, and tried to make it generalized and more brief, so people, simple men, could actually read it and have a little bit of knowledge of what is important and what they got to do. Of course, there's a lot more to it. Many questions might arise while learning it that you have to go deeper, either ask a rabbi or go deeper into the further explanations and commentaries, because it's, like I say, brief. And we are holding already, amazingly, we're already holding by the laws of tzitzit. We've went through many laws already, and thank God we're holding by the laws of tzitzit. We started last week. Sorry. I am sorry. Okay, we started these laws last week of the laws of tzitzit. Not always is it going to be something that is necessary for us to know, because if we're not making them especially. However, we'll go through them quicker, those laws especially, and we're going to be holding by them right now, and we will continue going on to other laws. These are laws that are important for day to day for a Jew. So some might be laws that are less practical. However, they are very regular things that we come across. Either some of them, other people do them for us, like tzitzit. People make them for us. However, the laws of wearing them, we discussed a little last week. So those laws are very pertinent. And some of us also make tzitzit to keep it cheap. We sometimes, if you think about it, if you wear the tzitzit, which is a requirement, like we said last time, and you buy the full package already made, it costs a little more if you buy the string separate and the actual garment separately and make it yourself. And if you know how to make it and you have the right mind set while making it, you can do it yourself and get a little bit of a discount. Some people have the time for it. Some people have the knowledge for it. Doesn't like crocheting. It doesn't take much to learn how to do it. It's more about the fear of God, making sure that when you're doing it, you're in the right mindset. And it's not as important, even though it's always nice that what you did before and after is only appropriate things, but it doesn't mean that if you had done something that wasn't the most appropriate, we're all human. If you didn't do something exactly appropriate before or after, therefore you can't be part of these types of mitzvot as long as you're striving and doing your best. At least I would say for such a mitzvah, if at the time you're doing it, you're in the right mindset, you're thinking about God, and when you're saying it, and when you're tying it, you're saying it's l'shem mitzvah tzitzit, for the sake of doing the mitzvah or commandment of tzitzit, and you're in the right mode. It shouldn't be a problem. A lot of us always are under the impression that, like I've mentioned many times, the bad Jew concept, which unfortunately is a wrong way of looking at Jewish life. It's about the mitzvah you do. Every mitzvah, Hashem smiles, and it's not all or nothing. And that's the approach. And therefore, when you come with that approach and you learn these laws, it will be more exciting to want to do them. As long as we're all striving for the right things. So, like I said, we're going to go through these parts a little quicker. And we welcome everyone to our broadcast. And those that are on YouTube, those that are on Facebook, and perhaps we'll, like I said before, perhaps we'll get out a little bit further in any other different circles as well. If anyone wants to see past classes, you're welcome to look at our library on YouTube and on Facebook. So, we're holding by the laws of Tzitzit Siman, which is chapter 9 and paragraph 3. And he goes like this. We say that the tzitzit must be tied on the corners of the garments. And it's a pasuk, it's actually a biblical commandment in Bamidbar. In Bamidbar. 1538. That says that you have to tie these strings on a garment. To summarize, we said last time that it's not an obligation only if you have a garment, a four-cornered garment. The obligation is to make sure you have a four-cornered garment and to put the tzitzit on it. Thank God today we have so many different types of tzitzit, comfortable ones. We did say preferable wool. I am wearing wool. In the winter, it's great to have wool and tzitzit. Keeps you warm. It's always under my garment. Sometimes you don't even know that I'm wearing it, but I'm always constantly wearing it. In fact, I wear it even when I go to sleep. You might think that that is a little strange, but the law of wearing tzitzit is constant. It doesn't mean that because you're going to sleep, you take off your kippah or your tzitzit. In Chabad, in our circles, even though I'll say that there are many good, pious Jews and even religious Jews that will take off their kippah and tzitzit when they go to sleep at night. However, in honest truth, and when you learn the laws, the reason for wearing these things, it doesn't mean that when you're going to sleep, the fear of God shouldn't be upon you. Therefore, some put on a kippah, like we mentioned in the past, a big kippah on their head, and some maybe will wear more comfortable tzitzit at night, perhaps maybe like the undershirt style, or even not. For example, I'll wear the woolen tzitzit, the same exact one I wear at day, maybe a different pair, but the same type. because the importance is to understand that God is upon us even when we go to sleep at night. So I'm not telling you to do to that extent, but definitely during the day, or at least one step at a time. If you have a special time that you feel like you'll be more into it, maybe on a Shabbat, like I mentioned, there was a person in our community. He made a good resolution. He's starting to wear tzitzit on a Shabbat. Already 2 weeks he was saying he's wearing tzitzit. Beautiful, amazing. So obviously, every step, every mitzvah you do is beautiful. Sometimes taking um, the full-on resolution might not last. So of course, one step at a time. But if you could wear tzitzit throughout the day and you could find a comfortable pair like they have of cotton and like undershirt um, style like tank top style tzitzit that literally they just have strings on the edges, but everything else is pretty much like a tank top. An undershirt, that is okay and could be kosher as well. Obviously, those that are certified, and you'll find them in the stores. They're selling them. You don't have to make those ones yourself. They have them available already today. And about wearing the tzitzit out or in. So of course, we also discussed that a little bit. We didn't go to the details of it, but it depends which sect you come from. Some wear it all the way out, some wear it all the way in, those strings, and some wear it a little bit out, like in Chabad. We try to leave it out a little bit because the purpose is that we should see them and remember his commandments. And then there are those that wear the whole garment over, and that's not in our circles. We don't do that, and others also don't. Some Hasidic sects do that. But the point is whatever it may be, if you put on the garment, and if you need to put it underneath your shirt and make sure it's totally covered because of work or whatever it is, that's fine. And if you find the comfortable pair, that's fine, and no one will even ever know if that's your concern. And it is a requirement of the Torah. So he says like this: the neck of shemachnisim beis hatzitza, the hole through which the tzitzit strings are inserted. So we make holes on the edges and we put the tzitzit in. Lo yehi rachik misfas habeged, it should not be positioned at a distance from the edge of the garment. Hein be'erech, hein be'rechiv, both in its length and its width. Yosem in shloisha agudolim, more than 3 thumb breadths. He's saying that when you're putting it, you shouldn't. It should be very close to the edge of the garment. That's what he's trying to say. That hole shouldn't be too far in. We're not going to go into all the details of the measurement itself because we don't really do that, and therefore it's not really our concern as of now. But if you want to know more details, exactly what it is, the thumb breadths, he says it's even the little tip of the thumb, and you could look further into that and you can ask if you'd like. And like I said, any questions, please ask. There are those that say that these thumb breadths, like I said, we measure it in the shorter area of the agudol of the thumb, which means it's top. We say that actually it's better to take the stringent approach in this, meaning to say how strict we have to be, that it has to be so close to the edge. Okay. We say it should not, the tzitzis string should not be put higher than that edge, any higher than that. Because higher than 3 thumb breadths, it's not considered a corner. So when we're talking about strict, you would say, oh, it's shorter. So why is shorter stricter? Shorter stricter is because we're talking about how close to the corner of the garment it must be. It must be on its corner. So that's something very important for us to know. So higher than that, it's considered a garment, but not considered the corner of the garment. Furthermore, he says, if one made the whole if he ended up doing it higher than these 3 thumb breadths, even though that when he ties the tzitzis tassel, when those strings of tzitzis, don't forget, the tzitzis is made up of 2 parts. like I mentioned. There's the garment part, and then there's the actual tzitzis. Tzitzis is referring to the strings. So even though when he's gonna tie those strings on, he'll pull the knot. He pulls the knot tight. And what happens is part of when you tie it tight, what happens? The garment or whatever it's being tied on, right, starts pulling together. And when it pulls together, then you could say it was on the corner. Nevertheless, it's going to be still invalid. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't have it the proper way. And if after the tzitz strings were hung, in the hole that is above that amount that we mentioned, that it was above and it was the wrong amount, was higher than that corner, and one made a cut in the area of the hole such that the opening now reaches closer, right? He made it a little further so it comes down closer. He basically cut the hole that it comes closer to the corner, even though he originally made it higher. And now it's lower than 3 thumb breaths. It's still puzzled. It's going to be still invalid. Would you believe it? Mishum because it says you should make the tzitzis properly from the start, and repairing is not allowed. So because you repair it, it didn't start the way it was meant to. Doesn't help. And he says further, also the holes shouldn't be so close to the corner, whether in its length or width. Saying too close means, what does that mean? Less than the measure that is from the middle joint of the thumb, anything less than that is going to be problematic also. Because lamata means lower than this, is also not considered a corner of the beged. But it's considered beneath the corner. So you see how the accuracy in the halacha, how it has to be done. And now you understand when you buy these garments, there's a lot of accuracy. And I have to say that with all due respect to those nice shawls, prayer shawls, that are like scarves, and some of them don't even have real tzitzis on them, I gotta say outright, they are not kosher. Number one, because the tzitzis is not real. It's not made from wool, etc., from what it's meant to be made with. And then there's handmade as well, which is extra stringency or extra, what we should say, beautifying of the mitzvah. But even if not, it has to be twined, etc., with wool, like we mentioned already in a previous law. And a lot of them are made of, I don't know what, some synthetic, and it's not even twined, and it's not even done right. And especially the knots are not even done right, when there's a whole crocheting, how it has to be knotted. And they're not on the corners exactly the way we say they are, and they're scarves, and there's a whole talis concept, the garment itself, how it has to be on the person, covering him from around his shoulders, etc., not just like over your neck. And sometimes people come to the synagogue to services, and they do that, and I have to correct it and explain to them that's not the way it is done, to be kosher, to say a blessing and do it that way. That's for a talis gadol. What we said last week also, there's a difference between a big talis and a small talis. Right now we're talking in general about the tzitzis on the side of the garment of a regular tzitzis. Talking about the regular tzitzis, the small tzitzis, as far as it seems right now, how they have to be on the one that the person wears underneath his garment. But what you learn from here is a lot of the laws are similar. There are differences a little bit in the big talis, but for the most part they are very similar. And you see the accuracy that's involved, and that's what I was trying to mention. Sometimes with the small talis, you don't notice it as much. Because you don't see people wearing them, you don't have to correct these things. But with the big talis, you do see it a lot, and from this you know that there is so much details to it. Now he says further. Any questions? Welcome, Mendel Vogel. Welcome to all our viewers. If anyone has any questions, please comment below, or you could give me a buzz. Send me a text. He says further, if the hole was appropriately distanced from the end of the garment, so he did it right, let's say, but through tightening of the knot, it ended up getting, like we mentioned before, it got squashed together even when he did it right. The Hein B'Kasher now doesn't have the minimum measure between the hole and the end of the garment that we said it had exact, those 3 thumb breadths. It didn't have the exact amount from the corner, right, to that the what's considered the corner, right? The amount of 3 thumb breadths between the hole and the end of the garment. So now when he tied it, it got crunched. Kosher. Nevertheless, it is still kosher. Would you believe it? Why is it still kosher? Because he did it right to begin with. Meaning to say where he did it doesn't matter how it ends up, the way it's crunched. The fact that it was done properly, that's it. That's what matters most. And then we say in the threads that are sometimes left on the edge of the talis garment, they are not rugin and not woven into the talis. Yesh safek. There is a doubt. If they are taken into account in this measurement of the corner, both with regard to the minimum distance from the end, thumb joint, and with regard to the maximum distance, 3 thumbs breadths. Therefore, it is necessary to cut off these threads from the end of the garment. Before the tzitzis are tied onto the garment. It's talking about, welcome Leon. He's talking about that we have these threads that come out of the garment. And sometimes you might say, so if it's on the corner, there's those extra threads coming out of the garment, not tzitzis threads, extra thread. Then you might say, fine, so that is the end of the garment, from where the thread ends, those threads that come off the garment. So he's saying you should actually cut them off and don't consider that as the end of the garment to make those measurements. And there was actually a question. It's a question. So he's saying in order that it shouldn't be a question, because if it still stays there, then it would be a question. You wouldn't know what to do. How should you measure? So if you cut them before, you have to deal with even putting on the tzitzis. And once they're cut, then it's not a question. You don't know. You don't have to worry, is this the end of the garment or not, because it's not there altogether. Meaning to say he doesn't want us to be put into that situation, so he says cut it off altogether to begin with. Like picture you had an extra piece of material coming out of your jacket. So you cut it, right? So he's saying if you have these types of situations where there's extra material or strings coming out in a very obvious type of manner, and probably more, it's not like one little thread, but it's like extra from the garment when it was made or whatever, cut that off, so it shouldn't be questionable, is that the end of the garment or not, by the corner. So what we said till now is pretty much the laws of tzitzis, period. That regards, like I said, that would be considered, and we're actually talking both of a talis gadol, as it seems right now, talking about both as a big talis and a small talis, the one that we put on in the synagogue, or the one that's worn under our garments. But he says you should just know that there is differences, like we mentioned before, and the talis katan with regard to the talis katan, some have a custom, they make 2 holes right near each other, like in the form of the vow, the Jewish vow of tzere, what we call it tzere. And that's how we put in the tzitzis. When we insert the tzitzis strings into both of those holes, we put it in that way. And so that they hang on the outside of the talis. So he's saying on a small talis, some have the custom to make sure it's 2 holes one near each other, so that they also hang outside of the talis, specifically by the talis cotton, by the small talis, the ones that we wear underneath us. He says further, because by doing that, you see, if you had 1 hole, so then it would hang down. It wouldn't necessarily hang from the outer side of the talus. By having it in such a way, and here you could see a good example. I'm going to show you mine. I pulled it out. Hopefully everyone sees. So you see how if it was one hole, it wouldn't necessarily work this way. By having two holes, it ends up leaving it on the outside of the talus. It's just basically a, how do you say it, simple common sense when you do crocheting or whatever it is, when you do these types of things. So you see, this is the string, and for our YouTube viewers, you see that see the two holes with the string coming out, and it's on the outer side. Two holes with the string on the outer side. And that is, like he says, there are those that have the custom to do it that way, so it sits on the outside of the talus. It's always sitting like that on the outside part. It never ends up falling into the inside or whatever. Sort of a way to keep it on the outside. And this is specifically for the one that we keep on us, the one that we always wear. The tzitzis, it's called small tzitzis, talit katan. He says further, we're holding by paragraph 4. Gotta get myself tucked back in. Okay. Im b'shas kshiras hatzitzis. If at the time that you're tying the tzitzis, basically while you were crocheting, meaning to say, okay, don't forget when you put on the tzitzis on the garment, you're doing the whole crocheting. I'll show you that part again. Pull it back out. Okay, look at that. You see, this is serious work. This is not just whatever the heck, you want to do on the garment, whatever designs you want. No, there's a specific way it's actually written in the books. I think I even have here a book called On Tzitzis. I don't know if it's in this shelf or it's downstairs. I definitely have it, and I think I have it in my library here. Definitely somewhere. Question is where. If it's here, I'll show it to you. If it is here, I will show it to you. If it is not, I will not waste any longer. It might be behind here, actually. Sometimes it's hidden behind, but maybe not. It might be downstairs. Okay. Either way, it's a whole book just on the laws of tzitzit. Would you believe it? Just on the laws of tzitzit. So there's a whole way how it has to be crocheted. So he's saying while you're tying that whole crocheting aspect, while you're doing the whole 9 yards, he says that the hole was at the proper distance from the end of the garment, right? Everything was correct, how we mentioned above. Then what happened? And afterwards, the hole tore slightly. Part of that hole tore slightly, or the edge of the talus tore. Part of the edge somehow got ripped. Until what happens is the tzitzis ends up, the tassel hangs less. The tzitzis tassel from the beginning where it starts, is hanging less than the minimum distance from the end of the garment, which was meant to. He says it is not going to be possible. Would you believe it? Doesn't get disqualified. He loik be the Torah because the Torah didn't require that tzitzis is not beneath the corner. Only when you're making them, while you're doing them. Something, and as you noticed the whole way through, if you did it right at first, whatever happened afterwards doesn't matter. And he's saying the same thing now as well. Even though something might have changed, when you were doing it, it was done correctly, that's what matters. It's at the time of making it on the garment. That's when it is so important that it should be in the exact wavelength, in the exact measurement before the corner where the hole is. If something ripped afterwards, fine, even though it's lower than it was meant to, or if the corner ripped, doesn't matter. And that's why it's not going to be disqualified. Isn't that amazing? Pretty interesting to hear that. Why do we decide that? Why do the rabbis, again, don't forget, everything the rabbis teach us, this is not made up, this is not theories. This is real stuff, it's all biblical, it's all from the Torah. We find it in Torah, and we mentioned this last time already. Just because a rabbi came and said that this is the law, as long as it was sourced, and the halacha, for example, is very much into sources, and it's codified, and it's reliable, etc., etc. We don't have to go into all the details of that right now, because that's for sure. But even sometimes other rabbis, you might question, as long as it's sourced, as long as it has the proper and accurate explanations, then it's real. And it's not just real, it is biblical. Everything has sources in Torah. It's an obligation for us to keep it just like the Torah. Of course, maybe we call it rabbinic, but it doesn't make it less important. Yes, thanks for watching, Scott. Thank you very much again. And have a good night's sleep and have a great Shabbos. And we're about to end there too, because it's getting late for everyone. Thank you. All the best. Best regards. Enjoy yours. So that is the importance. The importance is that you know that as much as it might be a rabbi that said it and it wasn't written in the Torah directly, but because it's sourced from the Torah, it has the same meaning and the same responsibility and the same obligation like the Torah. And we can't pick and choose and play games and say, no, if it's not biblical, it's not as important. We mentioned this already last time. How do we know that it's important to do it this way? How do we know that it was important at the time of doing it, that it should be done that way? Because it says, but also lahem tzitzis al kanfi vigdeim. It says they should make for them tzitzis on the corners of their garments. The requirement be on the corners of garments, not beneath the corners, only when they're being made. But also lahem tzitzis al kanfi vigdeim. It has to be on the knaf, on the corner, when they're being made. So it has to be done in that precise place when they are being made. That is when it needs to be that way. Whatever happens afterwards is different. But he says, nevertheless, ideally, still, as much as it's still kosher and it's not puzzle, it's not disqualified, ideally it is good to make a binding around the hole in which the strings are placed. Basically, make it thicker, make it stronger so it shouldn't rip. Like a binding, like make it in such a way, like what you do on binders, and you put that sticker to keep the binder not ripping the pages. So there's a way to do that also by the holes. When you make the holes, you should make an extra piece of material. And on our holes, we have that. It's not just a hole. It has also more sewing done around it, stitching, so it should keep strong. So the strings are in that place. And also he says the same thing. Also to do on the edges of the corners itself, so they should never rip and never become shorter. Make a binding edge on the talis garment. That we shouldn't end up in a shorter amount, like we mentioning, because it's ideally not good that it should happen either. Eventually, he says, although the tzitzis would still be valid if this occurs, the precaution is taken so that one can avoid wearing tzitzis that appear invalid to people who don't know the halacha. So it's all about what people are going to think. People are going to see you with such tzitzis that are ripped, even though it happened later and really it's still kosher now because it was done right to begin with. It says to avoid that issue of people asking, hey, it's not kosher because it seemingly looks that way, and then people will think that because they don't know, they might think that it has to be always that way, and then they'll think you're wearing non-kosher tzitzis. And to make people not think, God forbid, you're doing the wrong thing, even though you know honestly you did it right, and these are just people that don't know. Therefore, it's better to do it just to begin with the right way. We're going to stop here because it is getting late. So it was a nice reminder to end. We want to thank you all for watching. If anyone has any questions, please ask. And you could still comment below and we could answer you even after this. These live feeds are going to be saved. They're going to be on our page and you could be in touch with us in many other ways, via email, via text. Again, just want to mention everyone, this Shabbos is a special Shabbat. If you're here in Forest Hills, please come. We could both use your help for the minyan, to have a nice crowd of 10 men and more. We've had beautiful weeks, and we need that this week as well, especially for such an occasion, in honor of the previous Rebbe's yahrzeit anniversary and the Rebbe's leadership anniversary. And it will be a nice Kiddush and hot Kiddush and L'chaim, and we'll honor everyone with call-ups to the Torah. So if anyone is available that has not yet come, or if you know someone that perhaps you could reach out to come, or if you still haven't let us know, and you usually do come, or you sometimes come, please let us know and let the rabbi know. You could text me or reach out to me by email, whatever it is, and let me know that we could count you in for the minyan. And men, women, and children are all welcome. It's going to be really nice, in honor of this special Shabbos. I want to thank you all for watching. Stay tuned for our amazing, exciting new videos that are coming out, and for all our great programs and events. This is Rabbi Mendy Hecht of Chabad of Forest Hills North. Thank you again. Hope you enjoyed. Have a great night. Have a great Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom. Blessed Shabbos, a blessed week, and a great weekend ahead.